She was just a maid trying to survive in a mansion that wasn't hers, until the 65-year-old mafia boss looked at her and said, "You're the one." What he asked next made her freeze, because saying yes could secure her future, and saying no could destroy it. Before we start, tell me in the comments, if you were Kimberly, would you accept a life-changing request from a man everyone fears, or walk away with nothing? And where are you watching from? Don't skip the ending, because the truth behind why he chose her isn't what she believes. And when it finally comes out, it breaks the rules of everything she thought this story was about. Here's what happened. Kimberly was halfway up the staircase when she felt eyes on her. She turned slowly, heart pounding, and came face to face with Han Jun-se, the man whose name made grown men lower their voices. Kimberly Amati freezes with the silver tray, shaking in her hands. Not because the man whose voice she heard is dangerous, though he is. Not because the guards lining the walls are armed, though they are. She freezes because of what he just said, spoken calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. "I've chosen you to give me an heir." The room feels too quiet after that. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you're sure your heartbeat must be loud enough for everyone to hear. Kimberly's fingers curl tighter around the porcelain cup, knuckles burning. Her voice catches. She swallows and tries again. "Sir?" Han Jun-se studies her the way men like him study battlefields. Patient, exacting, already aware of where the blood will fall. 65 years of power sit easily on his shoulders. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a face that has learned how not to flinch. "You heard me," he says. She shouldn't be here. She knows that much. Maids don't stand in private studies. Maids don't get summoned away from staircases mid-shift. And they definitely don't get looked at like this. Not as furniture, not as labor, but as something considered. "I clean floors," she whispers. This has to be a mistake." A flicker passes through his gaze. Not amusement, not anger. Something quieter. Something that unsettles her more. "There are no mistakes in my house." Her stomach drops. An hour ago, she was polishing marble, her reflection warped beneath her gloves. Now she's standing under a chandelier that probably costs more than her mother's entire life back home. She thinks of Nigeria, of her mother's voice, of prayers whispered at night in a country that still doesn't feel like hers. "Why me?" she asks. Jun-se leans back in his chair. The leather creaks. "Because you don't look at me like you want something." Her breath stutters. "I don't want anything," she says quickly. "I just want to work, to go home." "There is no home for you here," he replies gently. "Not anymore." The words land heavier than the offer itself. She realizes then that the guards aren't watching him. They're watching her. "You'll be protected," he continues. "Your life will change. You'll never worry about money again. And no one will touch you without my permission." Her throat tightens. That's not comforting. One corner of his mouth lifts, humorless. "It's honest." She shakes her head, panic blooming sharp and fast. "I need time." "You'll have it," he says, "but you won't leave the estate." Her heart drops straight through her chest. "That's not time," she whispers. "That's a cage." Jun-se stands. When he does, the room seems to adjust around him. "Think carefully, Kimberly Amati," he says. "Some choices don't come twice." As she's escorted out, her legs feel hollow. Behind her, the most feared man on the West Coast watches a maid walk away with the only thing he has left to lose: hope. Kimberly learns quickly that protection and imprisonment feel exactly the same. 2 guards escort her everywhere. Not close enough to touch. Not far enough to forget. The other staff avoid her eyes, conversation stopping when she enters a room. By the second day, the mansion feels smaller, its vastness pressing inward. And then there's Mr. Lee. He appears without warning, like a shadow that detaches itself from the walls. Always immaculate, always silent, always watching her as if she's a crack in the foundation. "You're walking too slowly," he says one morning as she carries linens down the hall. "I wasn't given a schedule," she replies, keeping her gaze down. A pause, heavy, dangerous. "You weren't given permission to speak back either." Her cheeks burn, but she says nothing. She's learning when silence is safer than pride. Later that afternoon, Junsei calls for her again. This time, there is tea. Steam curls between them like something alive. "You're afraid," he says, not unkindly. "Yes," she answers, "because lying feels pointless here." "Good," he says. "Fear means you understand the weight of what's being asked." She wraps her hands around the cup, letting the heat ground her. "Why now?" she asks. "Why not years ago? Why not someone else?" His eyes drift toward the window. The garden beyond it is overgrown, roses strangling themselves on neglected trellises. "My wife died 30 years ago," he says. The words are simple. The space after them is not. "We never had children," he continues. "I built everything you see after she was gone. Power fills space quickly. It doesn't fill absence." Kimberly's chest tightens despite herself. "And you think a child will?" she asks softly. He looks at her then. Really looks. "I think legacy is the only apology men like me are allowed." Something about that settles uncomfortably in her bones. That night, she cries quietly in the laundry room. Fingers pressed to her, mouth to keep the sound in. She misses her mother. She misses anonymity. She misses being invisible. "You'll make yourself sick," a voice says. She startles. Junsei stands in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled back. Less myth, more man. "I didn't mean to," she starts. He kneels in front of her. The gesture steals her breath. "No one should carry pain alone," he says. For the first time since arriving in America, someone sees her tears and doesn't look away. But from the hallway, unseen by either of them, Mr. Lee watches and decides. Kimberly is not just a risk. She is a threat. Kimberly starts noticing the mansion watches her back. Not the cameras, those she already expects, but the people. The guard's gazes linger longer. Conversations hush mid-sentence when she passes. Doors that once stayed open now close softly, deliberately, behind her. And Mr. Lee no longer bothers hiding his contempt. He corners her near the east wing one evening, the corridor dim, the walls lined with portraits of men long dead. Power preserved in oil and gold. "You walk like you belong here now," he says quietly. Kimberly tightens her grip on the folded sheets in her arms. "I walk where I'm told." A thin smile curves his mouth. "That's what worries me." Her pulse stutters. "I don't want trouble." "No," he agrees. "You are trouble." She steps past him before fear can root her in place. Her knees tremble only once she's safely inside the linen room, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. She presses her forehead to the cool shelf and breathes through it. This wasn't part of the dream she crossed oceans for. That night, dinner is served with unbearable formality. Kimberly stands against the wall with the other staff, while Junsei eats alone at the long table. Mr. Lee stands at his right shoulder, murmuring updates in Korean. Kimberly doesn't understand the words, but she understands the tone. Tight, insistent. Junsei's jaw sets. He looks up. His gaze finds her instantly. "Kimberly," he says, Every eye turns. Come sit. The command lands like a dropped glass. Mr. Lee stiffens. Sir. Now. The chair beside him feels too close, too exposed. Kimberly's palms dampen as she lowers herself into it. She can feel the weight of judgment pressing from every direction. You haven't eaten, Junsei says, pushing a plate toward her. I'm not supposed to. You are. She hesitates, then lifts her fork. The first bite tastes like nothing. The second nearly makes her cry. Mr. Lee watches her as if she's committed a crime. Later, as the staff clears the table, Mr. Lee leans close to Junsei. She doesn't understand what this place requires. Junsei doesn't look at him. Neither did I. Once. That night, Kimberly overhears raised voices from the study. She's soft, Mr. Lee says sharply. Uneducated. Unprepared. She will ruin everything you built. She has more integrity than most men in this house, Junsei replies. She's a maid. So was my wife's mother. Silence follows. Heavy. Loaded. Kimberly backs away before she's discovered, chest tight with something dangerously close to hope. The next morning, Mr. Lee ensures she's reminded of her place. He assigns her to the lowest work, scrubbing floors already clean, polishing brass no one touches. He corrects her posture, her pace, her tone. By noon, her hands ache, her shoulders burn, and her pride feels sanded raw. She doesn't complain. But when she delivers tea to Junsei's study and finds him standing at the window, shoulders slumped in a way that looks almost tired, something inside her fractures. They're angry because of me, she says. He turns. They're afraid. I didn't ask for this. No, he says quietly. I asked for you. The difference matters more than he knows. That evening she finds him in the garden, staring at the dead rose bushes. The air smells like salt and earth. My wife planted these, he says. They bloomed even when she was sick. Kimberly crouches, touching a brittle stem. They're not dead, she murmurs. They're just waiting. He looks at her then, not as a boss, not as a legend, but as a man standing at the edge of something he doesn't know how to cross. From the shadows, Mr. Lee watches them together and understands something dangerous. If Kimberly stays, she won't just soften the boss. She will change him, and Mr. Lee cannot allow that. The first real fracture happens in public. It's subtle enough that anyone unfamiliar with power would miss it, but Kimberly feels it the moment she steps into the study carrying afternoon tea. The room is crowded. Men in tailored suits stand in a loose semicircle around Han Junsei's desk. The air smells like leather, ink, and something metallic beneath it. Mr. Lee is speaking. She doesn't understand discretion, he says calmly, as if Kimberly isn't standing right there. Staff have begun asking questions. Guards are distracted. This arrangement is inefficient. Kimberly keeps her eyes on the tray, her spine rigid. Her heart hammers, loud enough she's sure it must echo. Junsei says nothing. That silence is worse than anger. Kimberly sets the tea down carefully. Her fingers tremble, despite her effort to still them. When she straightens, Mr. Lee finally looks at her, really looks at her, with quiet satisfaction. Leave us, he says. The command isn't his to give. Junsei's jaw tightens. She stays. A ripple moves through the room. Surprise. Discomfort. Mr. Lee turns slowly. Sir. She stays, Junsei repeats. His voice isn't raised. It doesn't need to be. Kimberly feels exposed, pinned beneath their gazes. She wants to disappear, to rewind time, to be invisible again. Mr. Lee inclines his head. Barely. As you wish. The meeting continues, but something has shifted. Kimberly understands then that silence can be a choice, and that Junsei has just made one that costs him. Later, when the men are gone, she stands near the door, unsure whether to speak. "You heard," Junsei says, rubbing his temple. "I should have stopped him sooner." Her throat tightens. "You didn't." "No," he admits, "because if I defend you too loudly, I reveal too much." "And if you don't," she says softly, "I pay for it." He looks at her then, really looks, and something like regret flickers across his face. That night, the mansion feels colder. Mr. Lee ensures she feels it. Her escort is delayed, her dinner forgotten. A guard is reassigned without explanation. None of it is overt. All of it is intentional. By midnight, Kimberly sits alone in her room, staring at her packed suitcase. She doesn't remember packing it. Her phone buzzes. A message from an unknown number. You still have a chance to leave with dignity. Her chest tightens. She deletes it, then curls onto the bed, hugging her knees, trying not to cry. She misses her mother's voice. She misses certainty. She misses knowing where the ground is beneath her feet. A knock sounds at the door. Junsei stands there, coat draped over his arm, his expression drawn, older than she's ever seen him. "They're pushing," he says, "harder than I expected." "I know," she whispers. "You don't have to endure this," he continues. "I can arrange for you to leave, safely, tonight." Her heart twists. "And you?" He exhales slowly. "I've lived with worse." That's when she understands the truth neither of them has said aloud. Staying costs her safety. Leaving costs him hope. She swallows. "If I go, will you regret choosing me?" "Yes," he says immediately. The honesty stuns her. "And if I stay?" she asks. "Then they'll test you," he replies, relentlessly. Kimberly looks around the room. The silk curtains, the distant ocean beyond the glass, the life she never asked for, but somehow stepped into. "I didn't come this far to disappear," she says quietly. Something in Junsei's expression shifts. Not relief, not triumph, respect. "Then I'll make them answer to me," he says. From the corridor, unseen, Mr. Lee listens and begins planning her removal, not as a warning, but as a necessity. Because if Kimberly Amati survives this house, she won't just belong in it, she'll own it. The truth doesn't come gently. It arrives like a blade slipped between ribs. Quiet, precise, and impossible to ignore. Kimberly hears it by accident. She's returning from the East Wing late, her arms full of folded laundry, when raised voices leak from Junsei's study. The door is ajar. Light spills onto the carpet like a warning she ignores too late. "You can't keep her here under false pretenses," Mr. Lee snaps in Korean. "This has already gone too far." "I decide what is too far," Junsei replies. "You told her she was chosen to bear an heir." A pause, heavy, dangerous. Kimberly's breath stills. "That was the only way she would stay," Junsei says quietly. Her chest tightens, sharp and sudden, like a pulled wire. "The heir was never meant to be a child," Mr. Lee presses. "You're gambling with her life for your conscience." "I'm asking her to carry the truth I no longer can," Junsei says. "There is a difference." Kimberly backs away before her legs give out. The hallway blurs. Her ears ring. Each step feels unreal, like walking through water. So that's it. No child. No future growing inside her. No choice made with honesty. Her room feels unfamiliar when she reaches it. Too pristine. Too quiet. She sits on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, trying to piece the truth together from the wreckage. He let her believe her body was the price. Her stomach churns. She doesn't cry. Not yet. The hurt is too sharp for tears. She waits. When Junsei finally knocks, hours later, the sound feels like an insult, Come in, she says, voice steady, in a way that surprises her. He enters slowly, as if he already knows. His face looks older in the low light, tired, guilty. You heard? He says. Yes. The word tastes bitter. You lied to me, she continues. You let me think you wanted something from my body, for my fear. He closes his eyes. I was afraid you'd leave. So you decided I didn't deserve the truth? She asks. No, he says immediately. I decided I didn't deserve you. The answer lands wrong. Too little. Too late. You took away my choice, she says, standing. Do you understand that? You wrapped it in protection and promises, but it was still a lie. He swallows. I never intended to touch you. That doesn't make it better. Silence stretches between them, brittle and raw. You wanted someone to inherit your truth, she continues, to absolve you. He flinches. I wanted someone who could guard what my wife died for. Her breath catches despite herself. Then why not tell me that from the beginning? Because men like me don't get forgiveness, he says. We barter. We manipulate. We survive. And what am I? She asks quietly. His voice breaks. The only person who looked at me like I was still human. The words hit harder than anger ever could. Her resolve cracks, but doesn't shatter. I can't trust you, she says. Not like this. I know. And staying here now feels like agreeing to the lie. He nods slowly. Then go. The permission hurts more than resistance would have. She packs before dawn. No guards stop her. No alarms sound. The house feels complicit in her leaving, as if it's been waiting for this fracture too. At the gate, she hesitates only once. Then she walks out. Junsei watches from the balcony as her figure disappears into the early fog. He didn't chase her, not because he didn't want to, but because loving her, truly loving her, means letting her walk away with her dignity intact. Behind him, Mr. Lee exhales. The problem, it seems, has solved itself. But some fractures don't heal quietly. Some of them echo. Los Angeles doesn't soften the fall. Kimberly learns that quickly. The city moves the same, whether you're broken or whole. Traffic snarling, strangers brushing past, the ocean breathing indifferently at the edge of everything. She rents a room miles inland, too far from the coast to smell salt, too close to hear sirens at night. The mattress sags in the middle. The walls are thin. It's imperfect. It's hers. She finds work at a small cafe off Sunset, the kind that smells like burnt espresso and second chances. The owner doesn't ask many questions. Kimberly doesn't offer answers. She pours coffee, wipes counters, learns the rhythm of something ordinary again. But ordinary doesn't mean untouched. Some nights, she wakes with her heart racing, convinced she hears gates opening. Other nights, it's his voice that finds her. Low, steady, saying her name like it matters. She hates that part most. Across the city, the Han mansion decays in ways money can't fix. Junsei grows quieter. Meetings shorten. Decisions slow. The men notice. Mr. Lee notices most of all. She was a distraction, Mr. Lee says one evening, standing across from his boss's desk. You're sharper without her. Junsei doesn't look up. Am I? She weakened your judgment. No, he replies. She clarified it? Mr. Lee's jaw tightens. Then you're risking everything for sentiment. Junsei finally meets his gaze. I risked everything long before her. She was simply brave enough to see it. Mr. Lee leaves with a stiff bow, anger coiled tight beneath his restraint, and begins moving pieces. Kimberly senses the shift before she understands it. A man lingers too long near the cafe. A black car appears twice on her walk home, gone when she looks directly at it. Once she finds her door unlocked when she's certain she closed it. Fear settles deep and slow. She doesn't call Junsei. Pride won't let her. Fear almost does. The call comes anyway. A former guard, young, kind-eyed, finds her during her break, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. "You shouldn't be alone," he says quietly. "He's not well." Her chest tightens. "Who?" "You know who." She does. "He's getting worse," the guard continues, faster than anyone expected. Kimberly goes home early that night. She sits on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone until the screen dims. She thinks of the garden, of dead roses waiting, of a man who finally told the truth too late. She goes back. The mansion gates open without resistance, as if they recognize her. Inside, everything feels suspended, waiting for a verdict. Junsei looks smaller in bed. The power that once filled rooms now barely fills his frame. When he sees her, something like relief breaks through the exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here," he murmurs. "Neither should you," she replies softly. They sit in silence. It's different now. No pretense, no illusion. "I didn't come to stay," she says. "I came to understand." He nods. "Then ask. What happened to your wife?" The words land like a confession waiting decades for air. He tells her everything. About love that came too early, about fear disguised as control, about a choice he made that cost Eunji her life and turned him into something ruthless enough to survive the guilt. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He doesn't excuse himself. He simply speaks. When he's finished, Kimberly is crying quietly, tears sliding down without sound. "You don't need an heir," she says finally. "You need a life worth leaving behind." His hand trembles where it rests on the blanket. "Will you help me build it?" She takes his hand. "Yes," she says. "But this time, we choose, honestly." Outside the room, Mr. Lee watches through the glass, realization dawning too late. He has already lost. Because Kimberly doesn't return as a maid. She returns as a reckoning, and the house, once ruled by fear, begins slowly to answer to truth. Kimberly didn't step back into the Han mansion quietly. Word spreads before she reaches the inner halls. Heads turn, guards straighten. Staff pause mid-motion, unsure whether to bow, stare, or pretend they don't see her at all. She feels it, the shift, the question hanging in the air. Why is she here? Mr. Lee answers it for them. He intercepts her just outside Junsei's study, his expression perfectly composed, eyes sharp with calculation. "You shouldn't have returned," he says calmly. "You made your choice." "So did he," Kimberly replies. "You misunderstand," Mr. Lee says. "This house does not survive on understanding. It survives on control." She meets his gaze, steady despite the tremor in her chest. "And you're losing it." The corner of his mouth twitches. "You're a liability." "No," she says. "I'm inconvenient." That's when he moves. By nightfall, the inner circle is summoned. Men with blood on their hands and loyalty stitched into their bones gather in the main hall. The atmosphere hums with tension, thick enough to taste. Junsei is brought in last. He looks weaker than before, but his presence still commands the room. He takes his seat at the head of the table, hands folded, gaze unreadable. Mr. Lee stands. "For years," he begins, voice smooth, "we have protected this house from sentiment masquerading as mercy. Tonight, we address a threat to its stability." All eyes shift to Kimberly. She feels the weight of it, the power of men who could erase her with a word. Her pulse pounds, but she doesn't look away. "This woman," Mr. Lee continues, "has compromised security, disrupted hierarchy, and exposed vulnerabilities. She does not belong here." A murmur ripples through the room. Kimberly steps forward before fear can stop her. I never asked to belong, she says. I was brought here under a lie. I stayed because I was treated like a human being. If that's a weakness, then this house was already broken. Mr. Lee turns sharply. You will not speak out of turn. I will, she replies, voice steady. Because you've been speaking for him long enough. The room goes still. Junsei lifts his head. Enough, he says. Mr. Lee stiffens. Sir. She speaks with my permission. Kimberly's breath catches. Mr. Lee recovers quickly. Then allow me to speak plainly, he says. This woman will undo everything you've built. She invites sentiment, doubt, exposure. Junsei rises slowly, every movement deliberate. The room feels smaller as he does. She invited truth, he says, and that frightens you. It endangers us, Mr. Lee snaps. No, Junsei replies. It endangers you. A beat. Then, you've moved pieces without my consent, Junsei continues. You followed her, intimidated her, made decisions in my name. Mr. Lee's eyes flicker. Just once. You were protecting the house, Junsei says. Or so you told yourself? Silence crashes down. I built this empire on fear, Junsei says to the room, and it rotted me from the inside. She saw that. She stayed anyway. He turns to Kimberly. I lied to her, he says openly. And she still returned. Not for power, not for safety, but because she believes this house can be more than what it was. Murmurs spread, sharper now, uncertain. Mr. Lee steps forward, voice hard. If you choose her, you fracture loyalty. Junsei doesn't hesitate. Then let it fracture. He faces his men. Kimberly Amati is under my protection, he says. She will inherit my home, my name, and the truth of how this house will change. Anyone who cannot accept that may leave. No one moves. Mr. Lee bows slowly, deeply, but his jaw tightens, fury barely contained. Kimberly feels the room breathe again. Junsei sits, the effort visible now. She goes to him without thinking, steadying him with a hand at his arm. For the first time, no one objects. Later, in the quiet that follows upheaval, Junsei exhales softly. They'll test you. I know, she says. Are you afraid? Yes, she admits, but not of them. He smiles faintly. Good. Outside, the garden waits. Roses dormant, roots alive beneath the soil. And inside the house, something irreversible has happened. Power has shifted. Not through violence, but through truth that refused to stay buried. Power doesn't announce itself when it settles. It reveals itself in smaller ways. Kimberly notices it the morning after the meeting. No guard rushes her anymore. Doors open before she reaches them. When she enters the kitchen, conversation doesn't die. It shifts, cautious but present. Respect, she realizes, is quieter than fear. Mr. Lee keeps his distance. He bows when required. He speaks only when spoken to. But his eyes never soften. He watches her the way men watch storms forming offshore, aware they can't stop what's coming, only measure how much damage it might do. Junsei spends most of the day resting. The doctor comes and goes with hushed urgency. Kimberly sits beside him anyway, reading aloud when he's awake, holding his hand when he isn't. The mansion adjusts to this without protest. That, more than anything, unsettles her. In the afternoon, a senior accountant asks for her approval on a personnel matter. She almost laughs. I don't, she starts. He does, the man replies calmly. And until he says otherwise, we answer to you. The weight of it settles slowly. Not intoxicating. Sobering. She walks the halls alone later, fingers brushing carved banisters she once polished anonymously. The house feels different now. Not warmer exactly, but less hostile. as if it's waiting to see who she'll become. She finds Mr. Lee in the West Wing. He doesn't turn when she stops beside him. "You won't sabotage this," she says quietly. "I don't need to," he replies. "Change always collapses under its own optimism." "Fear isn't stability," she says. "It's efficient." She meets his gaze. "So is truth. It just takes longer." Something unreadable flickers across his face. Not defeat, calculation. But he inclines his head. "For your sake," he says, "I hope you're right." That night, she dreams of roses blooming through stone. In the days that follow, Kimberly begins making changes. Not dramatic ones, human ones. She asks staff their names. She opens windows that have been sealed for years. She reinstates Yoonji's garden with a groundskeeper who still remembers where the soil is richest. When Junsei is strong enough, she wheels him outside herself. The sun touches his face, and he exhales like someone remembering how to breathe. "You're changing my house," he murmurs. "No," she says. "I'm returning it." He smiles, eyes shining faintly. "You were never meant to carry my empire." "I know," she replies. "Only it's truth." That evening, a package arrives. No sender listed. Inside is a single photograph. Yoonji, young and laughing. Dirt under her nails, roses in full bloom behind her. On the back, written in careful Korean script, are the words, "For the woman who brought him back to the light." Kimberly presses the photo to her, chest, throat tight. She understands then what this place is becoming. Not redeemed, not erased, but honest. Later, she stands alone on the balcony, ocean air lifting her hair. The mansion hums behind her, alive, watching, learning. She isn't the maid who crossed an ocean anymore. She isn't the frightened girl chosen under false promises. She is the woman this house answers to. And for the first time since arriving in America, Kimberly Amati doesn't feel borrowed from her own life. She feels claimed by it. The house grows quieter in the final weeks. Not empty, never that, but softer, like it's learned how to hold its breath. Kimberly notices it in the way footsteps fade instead of echo, in how voices lower instinctively near Junsei's room. Even the ocean seems farther away, its roar dulled by something reverent. Junsei sleeps more. When he wakes, his clarity comes in flashes, sharp as ever, then gone. Kimberly learns to live inside those moments. She reads to him, old poetry, news articles, sometimes nothing at all, just the sound of her breathing so he knows he isn't alone. "You stayed," he murmurs one afternoon, fingers weak around hers. "I said I would." He watches her carefully, as if committing her face to memory. "You didn't owe me that." "No," she agrees softly. "I chose it." That seems to settle him. Mr. Lee keeps to the periphery now, present but restrained. He fulfills orders. He avoids private rooms. When he does speak to Kimberly, it's precise and neutral. No warmth, no threat. A ceasefire, not peace. One evening, as dusk bleeds violet through the windows, Junsei asks for the garden. They wheel him outside, wrapped in blankets. The roses have begun to bloom again, tentative, imperfect, alive. He stares at them for a long time. "She would have liked you," he says. Kimberly swallows. "I would have liked her." He smiles faintly. "You would have changed each other." Later that night, the doctor pulls Kimberly aside. His voice is careful, professional. She nods as if she's expected this all along. When it happens, it's quiet. No alarms, no last-minute confessions. Just a slow exhale that doesn't draw back in. Kimberly holds his hand until it cools. She doesn't cry right away. The house reacts before she does. Men who once commanded fear bow their heads. Staff gather in silence. Mr. Lee stands apart, face unreadable, hands clasped behind his back. The funeral is private, controlled, clean. Kimberly stands at the front, dressed simply, the photograph of Eun-ji tucked inside her coat pocket. She speaks only once. "He was many things," she says calmly, "but he died trying to become better than he was. That's all. After the house waits, for rebellion, for chaos, for blood, none comes." Kimberly signs documents with steady hands. She listens more than she speaks. When she does speak, it's with quiet authority. That leaves no room for doubt. Mr. Lee approaches her late one evening. "You won," he says flatly. "No," she replies. "I inherited." He studies her, something like grudging respect surfacing beneath years of control. "Then rule carefully." "I intend to live carefully," she says. "There's a difference." He bows. It's deeper this time. That night, Kimberly walks the mansion alone. She stops in the study where it all began. The desk is cleared, the chair empty. The silence is different now, no longer oppressive. She opens the window. Air rushes in. For the first time, the house doesn't feel like something she must survive. It feels like something she must steward. Outside, the roses sway gently, petals catching moonlight. Inside, a young woman who once crossed an ocean with nothing but hope stands steady in a life she never imagined, but chose, fully, to carry forward. Not as a maid, not as a replacement, but as the truth that remains. The house doesn't belong to fear anymore. That's the first thing Kimberly understands when she wakes on her 30th day as its keeper. Morning light pours through the windows without hesitation, illuminating hallways once ruled by shadows and unspoken rules. The staff move freely now, still careful, still respectful, but no longer afraid of their own footsteps. Change hasn't been loud. It's been deliberate. Kimberly keeps the gates closed to outsiders who crave spectacle. She keeps the books open to those who need accountability. Old alliances are reviewed. Dangerous ones are severed. Some men leave. Others stay, adapting slowly, reluctantly, but honestly. Mr. Lee remains. He no longer advises. He executes. When he looks at her now, there is no challenge left, only acknowledgement. "You could have burned it down," he says one evening, watching the garden through the study window. "Many would have. That would have been easier," she replies, "but it wouldn't have meant anything." He inclines his head. Not approval. Acceptance. The roses bloom fully that spring. Kimberly spends more time outside than in. She learns the rhythm of the soil, the patience required to nurture something fragile without forcing it to grow faster than it should. The gardener shows her where Eun-ji once knelt, fingers stained, laughter carried on the breeze. She believed things could change, he tells her. "So do I," Kimberly answers. At night, she sometimes sits alone in the study, the place where her life split in two. She doesn't erase its history. She honors it by refusing to repeat it. On the anniversary of Junsei's death, she hosts a quiet dinner. No speeches, no displays of power. Just food, shared honestly, with people who stayed when they could have left. When it's over, she steps onto the balcony, alone. The ocean breathes steadily below. "You were the last wish I didn't know how to ask for." His voice echoes in memory. She smiles softly, tears warm but steady. "And you were the life I didn't know I deserved." She isn't lonely. She's complete. Months later, a letter arrives from Nigeria. Her mother's handwriting is careful, loving, full of pride. Kimberly reads it slowly, twice, then presses it to her heart. She's crossed oceans twice now. Once to survive, once to become. The Han mansion stands behind her, no longer a symbol of fear or legend, but of something rarer. Choice. Healing. Truth carried forward by a woman who refused to be small. Kimberly Amati doesn't wear silk to feel powerful. She doesn't raise her voice to be heard. She doesn't rule by intimidation. She leads by presence. And when people whisper her name now, it isn't with fear, it's with respect. Because the story that began with a frightened maid freezing under a chandelier doesn't end in tragedy or submission. It ends with a woman standing firmly inside the life she chose, not inherited by blood, not demanded by power, but earned through courage, truth, and the refusal to disappear. And the house, once ruled by darkness, finally learns how to let the light stay. If this story made you feel something, confusion, anger, hope, or healing, let me know in the comments. If you were Kimberly, would you have stayed after learning the truth or walked away forever? Tell me your answer, and don't forget to share where you're watching from. If you want more Afro-Korean love stories filled with secrets, power, and emotional twists like this one, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story.